podcast. Thanks for joining us again. I'm joined here again with my dad, David. And so, just to kind of recap a little bit, last time we talked a lot about how the church can feel unreal for a lot of people, especially for my generation, the younger generations. We talked a lot about how this surface level faith, the religious performance, and shallow community can leave a lot of people just feeling disconnected. And so even while they're showing up, going, trying to put forth some effort, just still not finding that real, genuine connection and realness within that.
Right.
And so today, really, we want to pick up where we left off and ask a really important question. You know, if there is a problem, you know, people are always good at finding problems. So if there is a problem, what is the answer? You know, and again, it's not just one simple, right? You know, Jesus is really the answer for a lot of, we have the Bible to go back to, but with where we're at now, how do we trend back towards that Church of Acts, back to the realness of what faith is? What does it actually look like for Christians to experience something more real, together? We want to talk about what real Christian community looks like, how it thrives, why so many are still feeling alone in the church, and why the idea of core groups, the home church, right? Might be one of those ways forward of doing life together and having kind of that realness of faith. So, Dad, when you think about, where we left off last time, what do you think is missing for a lot of Christians right now?
Well, I think covering the aspect of is it real or not, it's really sad because my generation, we're so reluctant to step outside of our familiarities. We want to stay within those guidelines that we've been very comfortable for so many generations, that we're not meeting the needs of some in my generation and surely not in your generation. What's puzzling to me is even in the early church that we're talking about from Acts, when it was called the Way. They had problems. They had struggles.
Paul's got a lot of letters about it.
They dealt with things that we deal with, but yet they stayed together and they stayed focused on their nucleus, which was Jesus. Jesus was the center of their, not really, it was the focus of them coming together every day and breaking bread together. Mm-hmm. It was Jesus's presence in the breaking of the bread. So the focus was Jesus, yes, but it was in the presence of him when they were sharing and breaking bread. And whether one of the apostles or one of the disciples or one of the people that were involved in the church of the Way, even if they had disagreements and misunderstandings and controversies, they never let that stop them from coming together and breaking bread. That some may have had to step outside of where they were familiar. I'm not going to sit here and go through the Bible with you of the things they dealt with, but they stepped outside of those familiar things that they clung to because they felt comfortable there, which is what my generation has done to your generation. Instead of them stepping outside of those boundaries that have been set to where this is how we need to worship, we're leaving people behind, even people of my generation, because they're looking for something more, because they know there's something more. And the question is, are we willing to say that there is a problem, not is that there is a problem? What do we do to get to a solution? And to get to a solution, it calls for us to come together and be able to respect each other's opinion, because it has to go beyond opinion. Being a follower of the Lord and recognizing who our Father is far deeper than an opinion.
Yeah. It when you're going through it, talking about the early church, the church of Philippi. So he wrote his letter, Philippians. He was writing to the church of Philippi. When that church was started, there was 3 of them there. Yeah. One of which was Lydia. Lydia was kind of boss lady. She was wealthy, top tier. She made clothing of purple, which from back that was a very fancy, prestigious thing.
Very prestigious.
She was, and then there was a servant.
Mm-hmm.
and I forget who the third one was, but man, what did they talk about? What common ground did they have? Two completely different backgrounds, two completely different worldviews, mindsets, views on life, but yet they came together.
Yeah.
And when Paul wrote Philippians, he's in the jail cell, right below, probably in the basement of prison. Most joyful book of the Bible. They provided for him so deeply.
Yeah.
Like that community was so rich, and it started from probably the most awkward beginning in this group that we probably would have never pinned together ourselves.
You know, you said something. I don't mean to cut you off. I'm sorry if I did, but it just dawned on me. What a book! I challenge all of you to go read Philippians, because here's a book. It has reached into my core. Paul says there's so many things I can brag about.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot of the trouble we have with the church now. There are too many people trying to brag about who they are, what they've done, what they've accomplished, and they have so left that true core meaning of coming together, being in the presence of Jesus, and breaking bread, sharing a meal together.
Doing life together.
Yeah, doing life together. And here's Paul talks about all these things, and what does he say? They're as filthy as, use whatever terminology you want. Everything is nothing. Everything I've accomplished, I consider rubbish. Man, it took a while for me to get there.
Yeah.
And when you get there, those boundaries that you set, that box that you put God in, there's no more box anymore, because you know that it's not about being familiar. It's about being one with him in that intimacy and letting him take you wherever he wants to take you. And your life will begin to be a witness. Not just your words, but your life becomes that witness. Paul, that's why he was so influential. His life was a witness.
It was. And I think that's one of those things where we talk about, so many Christians can attend church. And maybe not even full Christians, people that are interested in finding genuine connection, learning more. Like, people can attend church, they can go regularly, but they can still just feel spiritually alone. And I think that's where maybe it's the distrust for the institution ties into it, because it's, man, how can I go to this place that's supposed to fill me up to get, and I just still feel further alone and empty. You want to speak on that a little bit?
No, yeah, and it goes back to all of us who are sitting in the pews of the church. When these people come in and there's a need, our society, we become so narcissistic, but it's just our society teaches people, you look at Facebook and TikTok and all these things, it's fake lives that people are presenting to people. That's not their real life. This is what they want people to perceive.
It's the highlight reel.
It's the highlight reel. And that's not real. So when people come to church, they're still in that mindset. I can't let the person that's sitting 4 pews over from me, who I know, see my dilemma, see my weakness, see my downfall. I don't understand that, because the early church, the way, they exposed their deficiencies. They exposed who they were.
It was real.
But from the pulpit to the deacons to the laity, they're all so scared to let themselves be seen who they are. I mean, I don't hold back from sharing things when you're in a meeting with me. This is who I was. It's not who I am anymore, because I know whose I am. Yeah. And I'm not afraid to share, because in sharing that, I know that I am being reliant on the Spirit, that advocate that he sent to us. The reason the early church was successful, because they relied on the Spirit of God, that promise that Jesus said, I'm going to send you an advocate. And they depended on that. Man, I'm going to tell you, I read some stuff you had written, and it's so true. 95% of the churches will continue doing what they're doing, even if the Holy Spirit wasn't there, because they're doing what they want to do.
Yeah. It's their actions.
Really? Are you so scared to step outside from what you're familiar with, to be able to trust God? Who am I that I'm on his mind? Who am I? That just makes me shake to the core to know that I'm so important that he's thinking about me. And I couldn't even begin to understand that when I was so focused on what I wanted to be familiar with because I was comfortable there.
Yeah.
I was comfortable.
Yeah, and I think that's a little thing that there's a conflict there, I feel like, with the idea of normal church and what my generation looks forward to.
Right.
Because successful church is a church that's growing in numbers. And hey, that's great. More people, that is
Right.
fantastic. No one's ever going to say that's a bad thing. However, a lot of people in my generation, a lot of people here, they're not looking for a bigger crowd.
No.
Like they're not looking to just be a number. They're looking to be known.
Yeah.
They're going to a place to be known. And when you go and you gather in this place that's just this massive, you're not able to be known.
Mm-mm.
And there's this thing, I think I preached on it a while back. Humans, we have this, it is in us. We want to be fully known and yet fully loved. And that's really hard, right? Because if you fully know me, then it'll be really hard to fully love me. But that is in it. And that's what Jesus fulfills for us, right? God fully knows us.
He knows everything about us.
Everything. And he could not be more in love with us. And it's like, wow, if we could see, but then we go to what should be his bride, the church, and it's like, oh man, if only you knew me. Yeah, I can't. Let me just, no, I want to be fully known, but I can't. No one's willing to, and so now we have this, it's the only word, it's lack of real connection.
Yeah.
And so we just kind of just go through life with, all right, maybe I just don't go, maybe I don't show up. And so, what is it that you think churches often confuse with real community? I mean, we say this, you hear it, but what is it that we're as a church confusing with real community? What's the substitute that we're doing for it?
Well, I mean, as I said, and I've said this to many people in my conversation, is the problem is we've made Christianity a Sunday thing, period. And I can do whatever I want Monday through Saturday, maybe a little less on Wednesday because I got a church service on Wednesday, and that's that. What's the image we're sending? What image am I relaying to people with my life and with my words and with my actions? Our stupid phones, these phones, they listen to us talk, and the people who are worth billions of dollars that run these companies, they know all the perfect algorithms that need to be let out there.
Oh, yeah.
What algorithm is my life saying to someone out there when they see me maybe Sunday morning as I'm leaving the church and coming out the parking lot? But what algorithms is my life saying Monday through the following Sunday? The problem is we come to church, we're nice and dressed, we go through the motions of the things that we're familiar with. Yeah. We don't expose our weaknesses, we don't expose our vulnerabilities. So when a person's there who's coming there because he has struggled all week long with clicks on the computer because he's addicted to pornography, or he's addicted to alcohol, or he's addicted to drugs, or all these things, and he sees us all sitting there all prim and proper, not looking like any of us have problems. What moves that person to come to us? Yeah. The solution that I've discovered is we have these phones, and so many people will be on these phones. Their screen time's maybe 4, 5, 6, 7 hours a day. Did you take any time to call a person just to say, hey, I'm thinking about you? Not, I'm praying. It's so easy. So many people say, I'm praying for you. I'll pray for you. I'll pray for you. Maybe they need you to just pick up the phone and call them and say, how you doing today? I've had more people come back to me and say, David, I really appreciate the phone call that you were just checking up on me. And it wasn't done on a Sunday. It may have been done on a Tuesday afternoon. Because that Spirit gave that I'm talking about, that advocate that God gave us, that Jesus promised us, God gave it because Jesus promised it to us. Yeah. He prompts us with those insights. Don't you tell me that he doesn't. That name just didn't come across your mind. Yeah. That insight was given to you. And I can't tell you how many times I've called a person, they said, I was just thinking about you. Mm. That's what's wrong. We're not reaching people beyond Sunday or maybe Wednesday. I hope I've covered it like you were.
Yeah, no, I mean it's so true, and it's just we talk about this a lot. The Sunday school class today we talked about, it's a model for true discipleship is when somebody comes,
Yeah.
right? They want to be a part. Man, most of the time, the second they walk in, we're judging.
Yeah.
Before we know them, before we hear their story, no, we're judging them. No, you need to look a certain way, act a certain way, so where you can sit in this room with us because we're all hiding our flaws too behind it. And it's like, people just want to be heard.
Yeah, well,
they just want to be heard.
Well, when's the last time you've gone up to somebody that you saw you've never seen him in church before? This past week I was at Daily Mass. There were two people there. It was a brother and a sister. I didn't know who they were. Never saw them before in my life. And after the Mass was over, I asked one of the people that I know. I said, "Do y'all know those people?" "Oh no, David, I ain't never seen him." I was like, "Oh, okay." Went straight to them because they were walking in the back of church looking at things. And I went back and said, "Hey man, I just want to tell you, how y'all doing? My name's David Peavy. Look, it was great having y'all at Mass this morning, celebrating the Eucharist with us. It was really great." I said, "Are y'all from here?" And they didn't go to church there. They were just visiting. And I was like, "Well, hope y'all will hope you come back. I mean, I'm glad you enjoyed everything." And as I'm walking off, the guy says, "Hey man, thanks for coming over and talking to me." I mean, I go sit with y'all after I go to 8 o'clock Mass, and when I see somebody different at the Baptist church, I'm not even Baptist. I want to make them feel welcome. I'll lean over to David and say, "Do you know those people?" "Well, no, they're new." And I want to make them feel like that we want them to be there, because if there's a need, we want to meet that need.
Yeah.
Which so goes what we were talking about earlier. It kind of leads us towards the core group issue in faith sharing.
Yeah. There's kind of the direction of going, and there's so much there. That is so much harder to do, because it just takes effort. It's not just about a performance, and it's genuine concern and genuine care. But man, it makes all the difference. I was thinking my buddy, his dad's a pastor, and he was a senior pastor. Not senior pastor. He was the senior adult pastor for a larger church over in our area. And they had a gathering of the children's ministry leaders. So this is all the leaders. Like, they've been in church for a while, and he knew everybody at the church. That was one. Church was growing. He still made an effort to go, and he went to the leadership meeting, and there was somebody there he's never seen before. He's like, "I've never seen this person." So before the meeting starts, he made it a point to go and address her. "Hey, I'm so and so. It's nice to meet you." And he's like, everybody laughed in the room, like, "Oh, that's funny." And he goes, No, like, this is an important thing. We're the leaders of this church, like, and we don't know each other, And he goes, that can't be. Like, we need to go and know people. We got to be connected with them and actually genuinely know, hey, what's your concerns? Why are you here? What are the things that we can serve you for, right? And so, but it takes more effort. I like this line. Sometimes church gives people contact without connection. And it's a face, "Hey, how are you? Good to see you again," but nothing past it. We don't know what's going on in someone's life. And so, what does this real together, mean? It's when we say real together, we're not just sitting in the same room, going to the same service, being friendly in passing. It's something like much, much deeper than that. And I think you kind of, hit on this as, real Christian community. What's it supposed to look like? It's this genuine diving deeper, meeting the needs of people. But I really want to talk about, what's the difference between just gathering together and walking together?
Well, the gathering together is really simple, because you just go to a worship service or a Mass or whatever at a specific time. You're familiar with the format. You're familiar with how it's all going to lay out, and everything's good. And you just sit down and you're like, "Hey, I am fulfilling what I need to fulfill right now," and this is good. But walking out with somebody, that's what takes faith, because walking out your faith with other people takes you out beyond the boundaries that you're comfortable in.
Yeah.
And I think that's where we can really reach the needs of those, because it's all about reaching their needs. You know, we get so focused on the numbers. How many people did I do this? Or how many people did I do that? Who cares about the numbers?
Yeah.
Are you truly walking out with them to meet that need of that individual? And you know, that's what church is about. Church is about meeting the needs of the people where they are.
Mm-hmm.
And it may mean you sit in that church service with them, but when that church service is over, maybe Sunday afternoon, you put a call in or you drive over to that person's house because you felt a nudge from the Spirit of God saying, this person needs some help. Will you reach out to them? Outside of the boundaries of what you're familiar with doing beyond every Sunday. That's not where it's at. I mean, if that was the case, why did Paul go all over the place? He could have just stayed in one place, built a church, said, I'm going to preach here every Sunday.
Come to me.
Come to me.
Yeah.
It's meeting them and going to them in their need.
Yeah, and that's one of the interesting things too with, you know, the early church, you know, the way, and they're meeting in people's homes.
They
were
met.
gathering together, and it was daily. It was every day. It wasn't just, it was this daily thing. And so I think that's one of the things, like, what did the early church understand about share life that we missed? Well, they were doing it together. The things that they were preaching, the things that they were teaching and speaking on, they were acting it out in everyday life.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this embodied community that we're all one body under Christ, they actually lived that out.
Mm.
You know, like, people get, we've talked about it, they came together, pulled all their resources together, and they met the needs of people. Hey, what are your gifts? Okay, those are the gifts God's blessed you with. You're going to go use those gifts. Here's my gifts. Here's how I can help you go use your gifts.
Yeah.
You know, so it was this actual idea of shared life. And man, all too often we just miss that.
We definitely miss it because we have so aligned ourselves with the way we think it needs to be done. You know, I'll give you an example. I'm a pretty raw man. You know, one day I wear a cowboy hat everywhere I go. When I go into church, I take it off, and when I go into people's houses, you know, if we're eating, I'll take it off. And I'm known for my cowboy hat. Well, one Sunday I was sitting in church, and this guy walks in, and he goes and sits down. He's just sitting over there with his cowboy hat on. Now, I wasn't upset at it, but I was like, man, doesn't he realize he's in God's house? I mean, we're in the presence of God. The Holy Spirit convicted me right there. He says, David, do you really think we can't handle somebody wearing a hat in our house? Now, I don't know where that person's at. And I just ask God to forgive me. And if there's any way I can help that person, put that person in front of me, wherever it is. But we're so quick to judge somebody based on our own ignorance. It's ignorance.
Yeah.
It's ignorance.
Yeah. And I do think one of those things too, it's kind of interesting talking about that, you know, this idea of people walk in, feel judged because we're prim and proper a certain way. And that's one of the things with this idea of real together. It means I don't have to pretend.
Mm-mm.
And it's easier to pretend than to be honest and real about my flaws, my shortcomings, those things that I'm still struggling with, the things that me and Jesus are working, you know, and I think that's where true integrity comes in, is the fact of, no, hey, I'm open and honest, I'm vulnerable. And so it means that there's people now knowing what I'm dealing with, but then vice versa, I'm able to know what other people are dealing with.
Right.
So then now God can use me through some of my own past struggles to then help me help them.
Right.
And I think that's one of the things with these communities that we just miss because we're not.
Well, we're not getting, not only that, but we don't get excited for somebody when they do find that oneness with God. Mm-hmm. We don't get excited, especially if we feel like they're doing it outside of the boundaries that they should be doing it in. Yeah. You know, I remember when we had that Faith Sharing in Southeastern, I know I shared this, I believe I shared it on the first podcast. I had a number of the young students from Southeastern coming to me because they knew I was Catholic. They wanted to ask, and every one of them gave, every one of them, why won't my parents accept me and listen, talk with me about this newfound faith I have in Jesus Christ? And I found it going to a different church. I'm not going to a Catholic church anymore. And I just looked at him and I was like, I have no answer for that. I have no answer for that. And it really pains me because here is your child I'll relate to my life. I was in the Catholic Church all my life. Through those years of college and stuff, there wasn't nothing there. There was darkness. There was sin. There was a prodigal son. Why are you so upset because your child has found a relationship with the Lord and has experienced this unbelievable intimacy with the Father in heaven when something that they didn't have before? They were just going through the motions. Why are you disappointed? Why aren't you supporting this person, this child of yours? Maybe someday they'll be back. But my question to you is, why would they be back? All you're doing is condemning them.
Yeah.
And yet they discovered something that so many of my brothers and sisters have yet to discover because we're so performance oriented instead of grace, peace, joy, and presence, position as sons and daughters.
Yeah, it's the faith becomes something lived in relationships.
Yeah.
More so than just a theory that we talk about.
Right.
Like it embodies. It doesn't embody what it embodies who we are. Like our identity is formed around this whole. It reshapes our life. It really reshapes the way we see things. It reshapes the way we spend our money. It reshapes the way we spend our time. Like it literally reshapes the foundation of who we are.
Right.
But we miss that, and I think that's kind of interesting. A lot of people, especially our generation, I think we're really tired of these shallow interactions.
Yes.
We've talked about it, and we want something that actually costs something. You know, not something. No, talk is cheap, right? Like it's no. Something that's valuable. If I'm willing to give up my time, my resources, my identity to something, I want it to be worthwhile, right? And I think that's why most of the areas where the church is growing the fastest is in persecuted areas because it costs something to be a part of a community.
Oh, yeah.
It costs something to profess Christ. It costs something to try to have underground church in your home. It costs something.
It does, and I was, I just got back from India in January in the first part of February. I was there for 2 weeks for my 7th time, and I was telling a friend of mine who's a priest. He's going to be going to India this year, and I said, man, it's going to be life changing. I said, when you go there, you've experienced it. There's a spiritual awakening that takes place, and he's looking at me. I was like, there really is. Every person that's gone with me has had an encounter beyond what they ever had before, and they came back a different person. Because we meet the real Jesus. We meet the poor Jesus. And there's persecution there. The persecution that I felt this last time was real. The most I've ever felt. But yet, it was okay. It was okay. Because I had this one-on-one relationship with my Father in heaven. Mm-hmm. And because of the encounters that I've had in India, that awakening has deepened because you see the faith of those people. You see the faith of those people within their persecution.
Yeah, you're no longer just together physically. Mm-hmm. You're together spiritually.
Yeah. You know the bishop told me this last time. He told David, you need to delete all your pictures and videos from your phone because when you get to the airport, they may take your phone and you could get in trouble. And at first I was like, the thought went through my mind, and I was like, Lord, you sent me here. You are my protector. Saint Michael, go before me, the archangel, And I was like, no. And I brought back everything that I had taken. How far will your faith take you? How far will your faith take you? Because let me tell you something. What you're familiar with will leave you stranded every time.
Yeah. Emptiness, like we say.
Emptiness.
Yeah, and this is, again, we're getting really close on time here. We really didn't get to talk much about the core group idea of stuff, but, when we're talking about Real Together, and next week we'll pick up kind of talking more about this core group idea and kind of what's been embodied in the community that we've seen. But Real Together it's when our faith moves from just a public appearance to this shared life experience.
Yeah.
And so it gets tougher, it gets more real, it gets more intimate. throws off all the I can't be a phony anymore. I can't hide. I have to be vulnerable and willing. But that's where true growth happens. You know, that's where the shared life and the purpose happens. And kind of tying it back in from the beginning, that's where that church of Philippi was at. They had a shared life. They had a shared purpose together. And so it formed and intertwined. And Paul's writing to them joyful of what they have.
Joyful.
Just amazed at what they, and it wasn't anything that they did, right? It was, they were just being who God created them to be. Serving the Lord.
In His presence.
Daily.
In His presence.
Any last comments before we close?
Nope, I think we're good. I'll let you take it to the end.
Yeah, well, I mean, we missed our conclusion, so next
we'll cover it.
next week we'll talk more about groups.
That's the thing about this podcast. This podcast has to be real. It has to be organic. And we can sit here and plan everything we think we need to talk about, but for some reason God wants us to share the things we shared tonight, because if only one person watches this podcast, that one person may need to hear the things
Something
we said.
that we weren't going to say.
That's it.
Well, that's a good conclusion. Guys, we will see y'all next time. Thanks.